How does a single speech, given in the middle of France, manage to kickstart a holy war 1,000 miles away? It is one of history's great questions. So today, we're going to peel back all the layers of faith and politics and really zero in on the purely military reasons that were given for launching the First Crusade. Let's dig into the official story, the military case for holy war, and see what was really going on. And it all kicks off right here, with this absolutely electrifying promise from Pope Urban II back in 1095. Now, you gotta understand, this wasn't just a friendly suggestion. This was a divine command that came with the ultimate reward. Imagine being offered a total, complete, wipe-the-slate-clean forgiveness for your sins, all in exchange for military service. This was the spark that was about to set a whole continent on fire.
But to really get why this call to arms worked so well, why it resonated so deeply with so many people, we first have to look at the threat that, according to the Pope, made this whole thing absolutely necessary.
So, let's meet the Seljuk Turks. In the 11th century, these guys basically exploded onto the world stage. They started as nomadic warriors out of Central Asia, converted to Sunni Islam, and then just carved out this massive, incredibly powerful empire that stretched all the way to the doorstep of the Byzantine Empire. They were the new, formidable power in the East, and everyone knew it.
Okay, so the first part of our story, the main argument you would have heard at the time, is this. For decades, leading up to 1095, the relentless expansion of the Seljuks was painting this terrifying picture for all of Christendom. It looked like a gathering storm, an unstoppable force that was threatening to just swallow the Christian world whole.
And this wasn't a slow creep. It happened with breathtaking speed. In just 30 years, the Seljuks go from taking Baghdad, the heart of the old caliphate, to absolutely crushing the Byzantine army at Manzikert, and then all the way to capturing the great Christian city of Antioch. This was a rapid, violent conquest, and it sent shockwaves all the way back west.
You know, let's just pause for a second on that battle, on Manzikert, because you really can't overstate how huge this was. A Byzantine army of 50,000 soldiers wasn't just beaten, it was annihilated, wiped out. This one battle stripped the empire of Anatolia, which was its main source for both soldiers and food. For the Christian world, this was an absolute catastrophe.
And it wasn't just about losing territory. Awful stories started to filter back to Europe. Tales of churches being destroyed, holy sites desecrated, and, this is a big one, of Christian pilgrims being attacked on their way to the Holy Land. A massive group, the Great German Pilgrimage, had been ambushed and destroyed just a few decades earlier. The message was coming through loud and clear. The Holy Land was no longer safe.
And this quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the sheer desperation. This is a direct appeal for help from the Byzantine Emperor Alexius himself to a powerful lord in the West. And you can see he's not just asking for troops, he is painting this gruesome, visceral picture of Christian suffering. These weren't quiet diplomatic notes. These were raw, emotional screams for military help.
So the case seems pretty clear, right? You've got a rising threat, you've got suffering Christians, you've got a desperate call for help. It's a textbook reason for a defensive war. But here's the thing. The official story, the one being told in 1095, was already out of date.
And this brings us to the other side of the story, the counter-argument. The idea that by 1095, that great Seljuk storm wasn't a hurricane anymore. It had actually fractured and broken apart into a bunch of scattered, disorganized little squalls. The big turning point was this, the death of one man, Sultan Malik Shah. He was the glue holding that entire vast Seljuk empire together. When he died in 1092, that unity died right along with him. His death didn't just create a power vacuum, it kicked off a complete and total imperial meltdown.
And the contrast is just night and day. Before 1092, you have this massive, centralized superstate that is an existential threat to everyone around it. After 1092, you've got a chaotic free-for-all. The empire shatters into all these competing little territories run by rival emirs. The Seljuks weren't focused on fighting Christians anymore. They were way too busy fighting each other in a brutal civil war.
And here are the new players on the board. Instead of one powerful sultan, the Crusaders were about to face this patchwork of independent rulers. You've got Kilij Arslan over in Anatolia, Ridwan in Aleppo, Dukak in Damascus, and each one of them was way more worried about their local rivals than they were about some new army showing up from the west. That single monolithic threat was just gone.
So while all that was going on back in Byzantium, Emperor Alexius was brilliantly turning things around.
By 1095, he hadn't just sat back and watched the Seljuks weaken, he was actively stabilizing his own empire. He had crushed the Pechenig nomads on one border and neutralized the Norman threat from Italy on another. His empire wasn't on the brink of collapse anymore, it was actually more secure than it had been in decades.
Which brings us to the big question: where these two conflicting ideas crash into each other. If the Byzantine Empire was getting more stable and the Seljuk threat was actively falling apart, why on earth would you call for the largest mobilization of European troops in centuries right at that exact moment?
Because maybe it was the perfect time for an offensive war. I mean, think about it. The fear, the memory of those Seljuk atrocities, still super fresh, which made it a powerful recruiting tool. But the actual reality on the ground was a power vacuum created by their civil war. The enemy was divided and distracted, the Byzantines were stable and ready to help a counterattack. It wasn't a moment of maximum danger, it was a window of maximum opportunity.
Historian Andrew Judishki sums it up perfectly. He says the timing was no accident. The 1090s presented this unique, strategic opening for the Christian West to launch an invasion and actually have a real shot at winning.
But then, other historians, like John O. Ward, they challenged the whole premise even more. He argues that the official reasons they gave, Manzikert, the danger to pilgrims, they weren't a true justification for war, a real casus belli. He suggests the situation for Christians hadn't really gotten bad enough to justify such a massive military response, which, makes the whole debate even deeper.
So we're left with this question. Was the call to arms a brave, if maybe a little late, response to an existential threat that had been terrifying Christendom for decades? Or was it a shrewd, calculated military operation, launched at the exact moment an old enemy was at its absolute weakest? The truth, as it so often is probably tangled up somewhere in between, in that complex mess of memory, fear, and strategic opportunity.